As a small business owner, you deserve more. More confidence, more connectivity, more of the tools that help your business thrive. And at Cox Business, you can expect more from us. We don't just have sales reps. We have perfect plan identifiers. People who will work with you to make sure your business gets everything it needs and nothing that it doesn't. Your business deserves more, and that's why you can expect more from Cox Business. Call 800-526-8572 to switch today.
Prepare for glory!
I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly. Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find them at FTFPodNet on Twitter. You can find me at SportsFanaticMB on Twitter. Not only are we one of many podcasts, but again, there are a ton of wonderful podcasts a part of this network. You can find the likes of Jim Day of FF Champs, Adam Ronis, and Dr. Rhoda of SiriusXM Radio, Bob Lung of the award-winning Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, Dwayne McFarland, Blake Sullivan, and a ton of other great podcasts, all on fulltimefantasy.com, your one-stop shop for all of your fantasy news, advice, and strategies all in one place. Today's podcast, we're bringing it back. We were not able to do it in week one due to the failed Vegas trip and me being sick, although I am now sick again, unfortunately. We're bringing back the famous Friday preview show, something that a lot of people liked last year. Dennis will be joining me here in just a minute, and we were going to run through every single game on the Sunday slate, including the Monday night football game. Give you guys our quick thoughts on everything, who you should start, who you shouldn't start. So, and of course, we will recap the football game that was played. I was going to say the great football game. It's not a great football game. The football game that was played on Thursday night. So let's get Dennis in here and let's start talking about all of this football.
Hello!
And we are welcoming back Dennis for the first time in almost about a week. I think the last time we had you on was last Saturday when you were in Vegas, so it's good to have you back on the podcast. How have you been?
You know, I'm like a salmon swimming upstream to spawn. I'm just keeping at it, just trying to stay focused, keep swimming away, keep swimming. I'm just swimming, man. The water keeps coming at me, and I just keep swimming. But I guess that's all you can do this time of year.
Yeah, I feel like as much as people that are in this industry like you and me are, especially with the amount of responsibilities you have, not just with helping me on the podcast and doing this, but also everything you do at Dynasty Nerds, that as much as we want football season to get here, once it actually gets here, we kind of forget how much work we have to put into a lot of this stuff. And so it kind of becomes a little bit overwhelming at times. But we did have a football game last night between the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's go ahead and break that down.
First and 10 at the Lions 29, and Prescott goes screen right. Elliott down the right side to the 25, to the 20, to the 10. Elliott to the pylon. Zeke Elliott, touchdown. 38 on the screen.
Second down and 10, takes the snap, gives it. Chubb runs, he's to the 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Chubba-Lubba Hub. 92 yards.
Left. Marshawn Lattimore, 12 yards from Adam. Case on a deep drop, steps up in the pocket. He'll fire to the right side, caught by Diggs. Stay up! Oh,
the Carolina Panthers side here, since they technically, well, not even technically, since they lost that game here. We're going to start with Cam Newton, who really did, at least in my opinion, and I'll be honest with all you guys here, I only was able to watch till about halftime of the game last night due to my work and being up so early. But from what I saw in the first couple quarters, he did not, I don't want to say he looked bad, but he was very inaccurate. Came in with 21.7 points in this one. Was 25 of 51 for 333 yards. Still 0 rushing yards on the season. Technically negative 2 yards. And it's something I touched on with Matt on Monday's episode. On Thursday's episode when we previewed the game. This would have been the first time now, or second time. The game Sunday was the first time in 131 career games Cam Newton had not had more, had at least no rushing yards. He got -2 in that first game. So sorry guys, I cannot talk today. My mind is all over the place. So this is now 2 games in a row though that he has not done anything rushing, which is a big departure of what Cam has been the past couple of years. So what were your thoughts on Cam and everything that went down in this Tampa Bay game?
All right. So we shouldn't be surprised that Cam Newton isn't accurate. Cam Newton has never been known for his accuracy, but he makes up for it with his mobility, and that's gone. Whatever's happening with his foot or his leg or his knee, it's not right. And so Cam isn't able to make those running plays that he used to. So then the running game is going to fall on Christian McCaffrey, who, as good as he is, I don't think he's built for 30, 35 carries a game. He needs to have, 18 carries and a dozen targets as opposed to, 25 carries.
Yeah.
There were some drops. Cam had some, I've got an 8-year-old son who loves football, and we play catch with the football all the time. I'm old and inaccurate. And oftentimes the conversation we have is, hey man, your job as a receiver is to make your quarterback look good. And so Cam's receivers last night had some opportunities to make some catches. Yes, they were tough catches, but some of them they should have made. They did make some good plays. They all in all, between Samuel and DJ Moore, they put up 190 yards receiving on 14 catches between the two of them. Greg Olsen added another 110. So plays were being made, but there were just some plays that were missed that kind of hamstrung the Panthers' offense. And when that happens, you'll see a game like McCaffrey had yesterday where he averaged 2.3 yards per carry. McCaffrey only caught 2 passes. He carried the ball 16 times. Short week after, I think he carried the ball 29 times last week.
He had 19 carries and 10 catches, so 29 touches.
All right,
together.
so 29 touches last week. So if he's gonna get that kind of volume week to week, these short weeks, I think this might be what you're going to have to expect from McCaffrey if you're playing. Well, and I guess coming into this, we all kind of thought the Tampa defense wasn't very good, so they stepped up their game against a struggling Cam Newton.
Yeah.
I think that it presents a couple of opportunities. I don't think McCaffrey, Samuel, and DJ Moore, I don't think you're going to be able to get them low. But if you're in a super flex league and you've got your second quarterback is a Case Keenum or something like that, a Joe Flacco, I think going out and getting Cam as a second quarterback might be a great move.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we touched a little bit on it in the preview for Thursday. I actually thought, so it's funny, Christian McCaffrey was 121 yards away, all-purpose yards away from breaking Steve Smith's record of most yards in the first 2 games of an NFL season by a Carolina Panther. Me and Matt both thought that he would get it. However, I did mention that Tampa Bay's defense since last year has actually been very good against the run, but horrible against the pass. So we both thought that they might try and make Cam Newton beat them and focus in on Christian McCaffrey, and it does seem like they did that, as McCaffrey only got you 6.3 points in fantasy Thursday night compared to the whopping 44 or 42 that he got in week 1. You know, you mentioned DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel, I think, actually took a step forward. I called for him to have a big game on Thursday's podcast and almost had my prediction come true. I said he was going to have like a 40 to 50-yard bomb, and had Cam Newton hit him in stride, that would have happened. But still, I felt like had a good game altogether. 11.8 points in fantasy, 5 receptions for 91 yards, was targeted 13 times compared to the 4 in week 1. And then DJ Moore, I'd like to get your opinion on this. Me and Matt both talked about it. I think with the way that he is being targeted in this offense, so 10 targets in week 1, 14 in week 2, 9 catches for 89 yards, I think he's a firm starter every single week now. I mean, this is a couple weeks in a row. He was doing it at the end of last year as well, putting up double-digit fantasy points. I think he's, in my opinion, secured himself as that wide receiver 2 or flex option for most teams. What are your thoughts on Moore?
I think if unless you're starting one wide receiver, you should probably be starting Moore. I think he's definitely in the wide receiver 2 category on a week-to-week basis. He may have some games where he has a particularly tough matchup, but even now, after 2 weeks, we still need probably another week or maybe even 2 weeks to play out before we see who the really good defenses are and who the really pretend to be good defenses are. And the same with offenses. You know, so many starters don't play in preseason or play single-digit snaps in preseason, that we're still functionally in the preseason of the NFL.
Yeah.
So it'll be something to keep an eye on. I do think Moore, you know, there was a lot of talk in the offseason about, who's the real number 1 there? It's DJ Moore. But Curtis Samuel on a week-to-week basis is going to be a flex-worthy play with high wide receiver 2 upside. You know, like if Cam hits him with that 50-yard bomb for a touchdown last night, you know, we're talking pretty big numbers, 140 yards and, you know, a touchdown to go with another reception.
Yeah.
So those plays are going to be there. Greg Olsen looked fantastic, though.
Yeah.
I think if you're playing in a tight end premium league, this may be a great opportunity to go. And maybe you have to pay market value, but if he's going to put up 6 catches for 70 yards every week or 5 catches for 70 yards, you know, he had 100. He was downfield yesterday. And there are some teams that just give up chunks to the tight end. So he put up 6 for 110 yesterday, and that's an outstanding day for Greg Olsen. It may be his last season, but if you're going for the championship and you need a high-floor tight end, this might be your guy.
Yeah, as long as he can stay healthy, I think he should. Him and Delaney Walker. We talked a little bit about Delaney Walker when we reviewed the week when he destroyed. I think they played some high school team on last Sunday. I can't remember who they played exactly, but Delaney Walker looked amazing. So maybe, you know, Greg Olsen has visited the Fountain of Youth here and is going to return to his tight end 1 ways for the last season. I would love nothing else but to see that, because that dude is a phenomenal human being alone. If you guys know anything about him and stuff that him and his family have dealt with off the field, I would love to see Greg Olsen go out on a high note. So let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who won this game. We'll address the, I guess, most non-important factor on this team, a guy that I thought might actually do some work in this one. That was Ronald Jones. Just 4 carries in this one for 9 yards. Did seem to get hurt again, so we got that going for us. Just 0.9 points in fantasy. With that happening, Peyton Barber got the bulk of the carries in this one. And week 1, they both split. Actually, Jones had more attempts than Barber in week 1, but Barber took the reins and ran with it in this one. 23 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Gets you 15 points in fantasy. And again, we've talked about this many times over the past year or so. You not being necessarily someone who thinks Peyton Barber is like a RB1 or RB2, but a guy who will give you consistent numbers. I believe the way you put it is he's a jag, but he's going to get you numbers. So he does it again, and it looks like moving forward he's going to be the guy. Jameis Winston has a better game than what he had last week. Obviously, doesn't turn the ball over. In this one, 16 to 25, 208 yards and a touchdown, getting you 13 points in fantasy. Before we move on to the wide receivers, Jameis Winston, a guy a lot of people had a lot of hope coming into this year. I know I was one of the detractors. We've talked about this many times. Love Bruce Arians, but I did not believe in Jameis Winston to be able to propel this offense. What are your thoughts on Winston? I don't want to overreact, but we're 2 games in now, and he has not done much in either game. So what are your thoughts on him so far?
Well, I think the jury is still out. I can see a scenario where he needs to learn the offense better. He needs to, he's still getting comfortable in a new offense with new requirements. He's got a coach that is putting a new set of demands on him. He's got a couple phenomenal wide receivers, and he's in the back half of the super flex area for me. He's going to be in that 18 to 24 range. And if you think that the chances that if you look at if you look at Evans and you look at Godwin and you think, man, these guys are going to put up some numbers, then Winston, they got to get the numbers from somewhere, and that's going to be Winston. So let's ride that. And so you've got a mid to low wide or quarterback 2 in Superflex. You can't have an RB1, QB1, wide receiver 1 at every single position in your lineup. So don't be out on Winston. Look around, but you want Winston or you want Joe Flacco?
Yeah.
You want Winston or you want Case Keenum? You want Winston or you want Gardner Minshew?
Honestly, those last 2, give me Keenum and Minshew. But we'll talk about those guys when we get to our Friday previews, our Friday preview stuff. Because I'm excited about both of those guys actually. I actually almost forgot about O.J. Howard. Gives you the big goose egg this week. Gives you the goose egg this week. Just 4.2 points in fantasy. I'm pretty sure we were both on the same page in this one, but I could be wrong. So. Please let me know if I am wrong, but I don't believe either one of us were that high on O.J. Howard because the tight ends have never really been featured in Bruce Arians' offense. Are you worried at this point moving forward with O.J. Howard?
If I'm counting on him to help me win this year, I am worried.
Okay.
I'm not counting on him to help me win this year, so I think this is a beautiful opportunity to go buy Howard dirt cheap and then ride it out for a year, maybe 2 years. The dude is talented. He is super talented, and his time is going to come. Unfortunately, our league mates listen to the podcast, so now they're not going to sell him to me for cheap. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try. I think when you're playing Dynasty, you want to get the best assets you can get, and Howard is a phenomenal tight end. He's a good blocker, an exceptional receiver. Maybe he's not going to be used the right way in this offense, but maybe they use him as a bargaining chip to get a guy at another position. If they go flip Howard for an offensive lineman, or they go flip Howard for somebody to beef up their defense, they've got Cameron Brate, who is the type of tight end that seems to fit the Arians system. Yeah. Good blocker, good receiver, but still a good blocker, and can be out there for every snap and isn't going to get hung up on how many targets am I getting. So I see this as a great opportunity to go try and buy O.J. Howard. I think it's a great opportunity to go by Mike Evans, too.
Well, that's the perfect transition into the new wide receiver 2 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a guy that I have never been that high on, and he has sure proven me right now, which does make me feel a little bit good here. So, 4 receptions for 61 yards on 8 targets, gets you Oh, my goodness. There we go. It gets you 8.1 points, which is obviously better than week 1, though he was dealing with the flu in week 1, so I'll cut him a break on that. And then Chris Godwin, 8 receptions for 121 yards and a touchdown on 9 targets to get you 22.1 points in this one. A lot of people I've seen overreacting to this a little bit. I was just joking about the wide receiver 2. I still think he's the wide receiver 1 in this offense, but a lot of people are saying that it is now Chris Godwin. How do you feel this wide receiver core is shaking out right now?
I think that they're both going to be very highly ranked wide receivers, but I do think that it's still Mike Evans as the wide receiver 1. Winston, Evans had a couple opportunities yesterday where he was open and Winston didn't hit him. Evans does need to do a better job separating, and right now that is that's where Godwin has the edge. Is he separates better, but I mean, it can't. Evans had 1,500 yards receiving last year. It's not like Winston doesn't know how to throw the ball to him. I mean, Evans has had 1,000, 1,200, 1,300, 1,000, 1,500. Winston can get the ball to him just fine. So he's going to be fine. Godwin is the best number 2 receiver that they've had there. So, sure, there is the target distribution maybe going to be a little more fluid from game to game. Maybe, but I mean, Godwin had 9 targets yesterday and Evans had 8. It's not like it was, one had 14 and one had 5. So the target distribution is still pretty even. Evans will get his. I think those people who are in love with Godwin right now, let all that hyperbole flow and go get you some cheap shares of Mike Evans.
Yeah, and something that I touched on in the show on Thursday when we previewed the game was that I actually said don't expect a huge game out of Mike Evans. Last year, in the 2 games that he played Carolina, he did not get double-digit points in either one of them. In fact, together combined, he barely broke double digits. James Bradbury had shadowed him for the most part in both games and really had shut him down. Bradbury was on him a lot last night as well. Bradbury, a very good and underrated cornerback. So I think that is part of it. And he honestly just missed a touchdown as well. He had it in his hand, kind of juggled it, and fell out of bounds. So Mike Evans could have had a much bigger day, just missed the touchdown. I do agree with you. As much as I like to hate on Mike Evans, better days are coming for him. Don't panic too much just yet, unless it's someone else panicking, and in which case I do agree with Dennis. Buy low on him now if you can.
Well, it's interesting because if you look, Evans is getting the number 1 cornerback, and Godwin's going against the number 2. Juju is kind of facing Juju is an example of kind of what's happening in Tampa. Juju spent the first 2 years with Antonio Brown taking the number 1 cornerback, and Juju getting the number 2, maybe the number 3 if he is in the slot. So Godwin is getting the easier matchup versus Evans, who's getting the top guy. So they're going to get him. He'll get his. Don't fret or sell him to me.
Yeah, only fret if you're in a league with Dennis and you can sell him to Dennis.
We eating all day, bro. I'm hitting you every time. Every time you come this way, I'm going to hit you. I'm not going to be able to do that. You don't want no problems, bro. You a little boy. I'm a man. It's about to get ugly. I want to score. Yeah. You only talk so much. It's time to do now.
Now just a good old-fashioned rear end whipping.
To the house, baby. I'm in a league of my own. They ain't ready for me. Are you tired? Are you tired? Let's go. Good game.
Game previews. All right, so now we are going to be breaking down all of the Sunday games, full Sunday slate, like I used to do all of last year. As I mentioned in the intro, one of the episodes that everybody apparently looked forward to every week. We will go through every single game, and since I have Dennis here with me, we will also do the Monday Night Football game as well, and then possibly, if we have time, some bold predictions at the end. Just a couple just for fun, bold predictions, make some calls on some players, see if we can't get them right. So the first game on the docket we have today is the Bills versus the Giants. Bills getting 1.5 points. Giants side, we'll start there first, since they really don't have anybody worth starting outside of Barkley and Ingram. We now know Sterling Shepard is out of this game. He is in the concussion protocol. Looks like Cody Latimer is dealing with an injury as well. He might not play. I mean, the Giants look like a complete
Benny Fowler season.
Yeah, that's too bad, In all honesty, it really sucks even more now that Corey Coleman tore his ACL. That was, and in my opinion, a good call by you in the preseason, a guy who could have a really good year, and had he been there, I think he would have really been shining right now. But I did want to ask you about Eli Manning. Actually put up fairly decent numbers against the Dallas Cowboys last week, in fantasy and in the NFL terms. Do you think he is worth starting in a Superflex league?
Oh, I think so. I think it depends on who your options are.
Right.
He's typically going to be, in a 12 team. He might be your third quarterback. So, but if you watch how he's doing, that offensive line is playing better, and when he throws the ball to Barkley, those count as passing yards. And when Barkley scores a receiving touchdown, that counts as a touchdown for Eli Manning. So, and Evan Ingram, man, he's balling out. He's could be the only show in town this week. Yeah. But 20 targets do a body good, I guess. There's NFL play. I think it's going to be a rough day for Eli. I probably wouldn't start him this week. It's going to be rough just because of the talent he's working with. I think the line is better, but they'll be able to stack the line against Barkley, and they'll be able to double team Ingram. So then it comes down to, can any of those other guys, can they make some plays? Is Latimer, or you said Latimer was out, is Fowler going to be able to make some plays?
Latimer's not out. He's just dealing with an injury. I think the only one they've ruled out for sure right now is Sterling Shepard. He's in the concussion protocol.
Okay, so, if Latimer and Fowler can make some plays, and they've flashed over their careers, neither one of them have been consistent, and they're not the kind of guys I think that are going to, they're not going Brandon Lloyd on us. But they have times where they flash. And they get it done for a short period of time. So it's a rivalry game. It's Dallas against the Giants, and Eli. He can pull a rabbit out of his hat like nobody's business. Just ask Bill Belichick. Yeah. So if any of those things happen, and then they've got they could bring Wayne Gallman in and maybe put Barkley out wide, or put Gallman out wide and Barkley in the backfield. Both of them guys are very adept at catching the ball. And so there's going to be opportunities. Pat Shurmur is going to have to be creative because he's not working with the highest level talent. These Rudies are going to have to step up.
All right, on the Bills side of things, I'm gonna group all three of these guys together. You always have Josh Allen, who had a rough game last week, especially if you count in all the turnovers. But John Brown and Cole Beasley had decent games. Brown, a much better game with the touchdown, a little bit fluky with the touchdown that he caught there. But what are you thinking about these three this week? The Giants obviously struggled mightily against Dallas and that offense in the passing game this past week. Do you think Josh Allen and John Brown are a worthy start this week? And do you think Cole Beasley is someone you should be looking at?
They're deeper starts. Allen could potentially, because he could be Cam Newton of 3 years ago. So, 53% completion and 50 yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown. And that's going to be a good game if he puts up a couple hundred yards through the air. I think Brown is going to be what he is, which is that deep threat. And if Allen gets the ball, has time, gets the ball down there, Beasley is who he is. He's your short guy. He's going to get you, he's going to get you the first downs. He's a PPR guy. They're both, Brown and Beasley are flex guys. Especially, I'd probably consider them more in deeper leagues where I'm looking at, 3 wide receivers and 2 flexes maybe. Once I get down 5 deep in my wide receivers, there I'm pretty comfortable starting Brown and Beasley, in the wide receiver 4 with, low end wide receiver 3 upside.
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, Brown, I don't know if I'd start Beasley this week. I guess if in a deeper league like you were just talking about, I would. Brown, I think in even your standard 12-team leagues, I'd feel safe starting him as my flex spot. I think against this Giants team, he has a chance to have a good game. And Josh Allen, I've got him ranked right around the 15 spot this week. So I feel like if depending on where you are at quarterback, I feel like he could be a safe play, a guy with a lot of upside this week. Devin Singletary, a guy we've both been on all offseason. Easy start for me this week. Looked good in his limited, and I mean limited amount of carries last week. I think he has a shot to jump up into that top. I actually think he finished in the top 15 last week. I think he stays there this week. You have any concerns about Singletary going against these Giants?
No, the only concern is the amount of touches. NFL coaches get so stubborn. And I love Frank Gore. He's everybody's grandpa. But at some point, you have to roll the dice, and you got to give that young guy the ball. And Singletary just is showing when you get the ball in his hand, he's making plays. So get the ball in his hand.
Yeah.
Let's, what have you got to lose?
All right, pick'em time. I am taking the Bills. Who are you taking?
I'm going to take the Bills.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. 49ers at the Bengals. Bengals getting 2 points. The 49ers side. Jimmy G, I think, has proven that he deserves to stay on your bench until he can prove that he can do something here. Obviously, not look that good in the preseason. Did not look good at all against a Tampa Bay team that maybe we are underrating a little bit on defense after what they did against Carolina again last night. We saw Tevin Coleman get hurt yet again, so it looks like it's going to be the Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert play this week. Which one are you leaning on more this week, Breida or Mostert?
Well, my expectation is that Breida is going to get dinged up during the game, and he's going to keep playing.
Yeah.
Breida he's like a robot out there. They're going to split time. That's the Shanahan running back. They're going to split time. I think both of them are flex worthy. Breida probably has low end. He's probably high end running back 3 upside. Mostert's probably low end running back 3 upside. But I think they're both probably flex worthy.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. I grabbed Mostert in a lot of places the past couple days, and I'm right there with you. If he's someone that you say if you have a Darius Geis and you couldn't get Adrian Peterson or Chris Thompson, I would feel safe playing Mostert this week, and every week he's healthy. I don't want people to forget how good he was last year when the 49ers were in the same situation before he got that compound fracture in his arm. Him and Breida were splitting the carries, and he was actually looking a lot better than Breida at times. I think Breida gets a little bit more upside in the receiving game than Mostert does, but Mostert is not a bad runner at all, so I agree with you. Both worthy flex starters, especially this week against the Bengals team. George Kittle. Obviously, stud, going to be a top option right there in the receiving game and going to be a top tight end option. Do you trust starting anybody in this receiving core right now outside of Kittle?
Man, I want to trust Deebo Samuel. I love that guy.
Yeah.
But I think I think this is an offense that needs to get some reps together. They need to figure out who they are. They need their offensive line to gel some. They've got some talent. Goodwin and Samuel. It's I don't know what happened with Dante Pettis, but man, talk about landing in the doghouse.
Yeah.
And I can't. I don't know if you've heard anything, but all I hear is, well, he's got to earn it.
Yeah.
Well, what did he do to not earn it? I thought he was the starter. So what did he do to get demoted? So it's weird as hell. I don't know what's going on there. But until then, I don't think Richie James is the answer. He's a returner. I think Debo and Kendrick Bourne and Marquise Goodwin, they're the guys who are going to have to go out there and make it happen.
Yeah, for me, I'm not starting any of them unless I'm extremely desperate. At this point, I'd rather be late to the party on a San Francisco wide receiver than early. On the Bengals side, we've talked about it in the offseason. We needed to see what this offense looked like. Now, I don't think Seattle's defense is quite what it used to be, but the Bengals look good, and the Red Rifle looked good. I can't even call them the Red Water Pistol anymore. Andy Dalton looked good against Seattle last week, had a chance to win the game, didn't make it happen, but still overall a really good game from him. Definitely a super flex starter, in my opinion. I think moving back up the ranks to a possible fantasy starter in 12, just regular 12-team leagues as well. Mixon, he is questionable at the moment. We have not heard for sure if he's going to be in or out. I think regardless, Gio Bernard is a great start for me in this game. I think that he's going to be leaned on heavily. Talked about it a bunch of times. He's a guy I grabbed in a ton of leagues at the end of my drafts. Due to Mixon's injury history, Bernard has shown that when he is given the opportunity, he can be an RB1 when he stays healthy as well. What do you have any thoughts on the Mixon-Bernard situation?
Well, the only concern I have with Bernard is that he breaks down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been his obstacle. He looks great in the receiving game. He flashes in the running game. And then he's out for 2 games. So, well, I think in this situation, if Mixon's out, you start Bernard. They're going in with the game plan to give him 75% of the running back touches. But you don't know if he's going to live through it.
Yeah.
And he may make it through this week. Maybe he goes down next week. I don't know. It could be Samaje Perine season there in Cincinnati.
Oh, God. I don't think that'd be good for anybody, fantasy owners or Samaje Perine or the Cincinnati.
Is Travion Williams healthy, or is he still out?
No, he's still injured right now. If he was healthy, I would probably be directing people more toward him, but he's not, and I'm not a believer in Perine, so I'm hoping Bernard doesn't get hurt, but like I said, he's a guy that I own in a lot of places, and I'm starting him in a lot of leagues this weekend in hopes that he does something. Obviously, Tyler Boyd, we know he's good. Gave you I can't remember exactly what his stat line was off the top of my head at the moment, but he got a decent game against Seattle, gave you exactly what you were hoping for outside of a touchdown. John Ross was the guy, though. Obviously, 2 touchdowns, 2 long touchdowns. We've seen it before from John Ross, where he gives you these amazing games, then pulls his hamstring the next week and is out the rest of the season. You did mark on here that this is his 3rd year, and there's obviously the big stigma around 3rd-year breakout wide receivers. So is this John Ross's breakout year?
I got to be honest. I've slid him into a couple starting lineups.
All right.
I'm looking at it, and, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, if not now, when? So he's coming off a hot streak. So with Ross, that 3rd-year breakout, I think could be a real thing. He's fast. He's bigger, I think, than people remember. He's 6 foot or 6'1", about 190 pounds. So we've seen that Sean McVay offense that Zach Taylor is running make guys like him, like Ross, be very productive. So when you look at Ross and Boyd, the opportunity is going to be there.
Yeah, and we cannot forget that he was a first-round pick for the Bengals just a couple years ago. So, and when he got picked, I believe it was like 9 overall. Nobody freaked out about it, too. It's not like people were going, oh, my God, why did the Bengals just draft John Ross here? Like, it was not a widely discussed pick as a bad pick. So don't let everybody forget that he was a very talented wide receiver.
You weren't in Ohio. There were a lot of people up here going, what the fuck?
Well, from where I was sitting, there was not a lot of people questioning the pick. So I think I'm right there with you. I grabbed him in a couple of leagues, and I'm hoping that maybe this is it, because a couple of those are dynasty leagues as well. So I'd love to have him as my 3rd or 4th option at wide receiver. I am taking the Bengals in this game. Who do you got?
Well, I'm going with the Bengals too.
All right, so the next game on the docket is the Los Angeles Chargers and the Detroit Lions. The Chargers getting 2.5 points. On the Chargers side, where would you rank Phillip Rivers this week? Not a horrible week last week against the Colts, but going up against your Detroit Lions. You think he's got a chance to finish in the top 15?
Yeah. You know, the Lions, I don't know, but I love the Lions, man, but I don't know if Matt Patricia's getting it figured out. Sometimes they look really good, and then sometimes he, gives a star running back 7 carries in a game. It's something Taylor Decker all of a sudden doesn't know how to block a defensive end, and, that leads to Matt Stafford getting killed. So, I like the Lions. I don't think they're going to win this game. To preview my pick, I think that the Chargers' defense is too good. But I do think the opportunity is there for a 31-21 game that could lead to good fantasy production on both sides.
All right, well, for Phillip Rivers to have a good game, we're likely going to need Austin Eckler to do close to what he did last week. Finished his RB2 on the week. Don't think he finishes that high yet again, but do you think he has a chance to finish as a top 12 performer this week?
Well, I mean, everybody has a chance.
What would you give his chance to be?
I think he's. I don't expect a top 2 performance. I think he's going to probably come back to earth a bit. I definitely think he's top 15 running back this week. He's a great pass catching back, and he's an effective runner. And he's not tiny. He's got okay size, but he's definitely not somebody you want to pound into the line 20 times. You want to get him out in some space. Him and Jackson are very similar in size. I just think Jackson is a little better inside runner, whereas Eckler is better when you get him out in space. So that leads to Eckler, even if they split touches evenly, Eckler will get the majority of the passing reps. So Eckler has the opportunity to put up more fantasy points just from volume. So I like Eckler. If I have Eckler, I'm starting Eckler. He's kind of taken over. He's taken over 70% of the Melvin Gordon role.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got him in top 15 play as well. Obviously, when you score 3 touchdowns in a week, that does skew your numbers just a little bit. But did get 12 carries and 6 catches in that game, 96 yards in the receiving game. So I agree with you. I still think Justin Jackson is going to get a fair amount of run. But Austin Eckler, with what he does in the receiving game, is what's going to boost his fantasy value. Top 15 for me, maybe a little bit higher, but I don't see him finishing as number 2 again this week. The big question for the Chargers is going to be that receiving game. Obviously, we saw Hunter Henry go down with injuries. Looks like Mike Williams is in or out it seems like that changes every couple of hours. Even if he does play, I would imagine he's not going to be that high upside wide receiver 2 that you want him to be with dealing with that knee injury. So it looks like they're really relying on Keenan Allen and possibly Travis Benjamin. I do think Benjamin, if he is out there, could have a decent game opposite of Keenan Allen, obviously being locked up with Darius Slay there. I would think with where you drafted Keenan Allen, he likely has to go into your lineup, but are you expecting much out of these wide receivers against the Lions? My goodness, I can't speak. On Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, Allen has shown that he doesn't have to be open to catch the ball. So he's a really good route runner, and he'll take the ball from the defensive back. That being said, I would probably expect his catch rate to be a little lower because Darius Slay is a very good cornerback. But Phillip Rivers isn't afraid to throw it into coverage. Their tight end position, is going to be a mess and isn't going to provide a lot of support. This could be another one of those games where they have Jackson and Eckler on the field at the same time, Jackson in the backfield and Eckler in the slot, with Travis Benjamin out wide on one side and Keenan Allen out wide on the other. So that could present a dynamic that allows Allen and Benjamin to have some space to work with. I think Benjamin is the sneaky play here.
Yeah.
He's their big play guy. Maybe they promote Artavis. Was it Artavis Scott they had that they let go and maybe signed to their practice squad that was having a real good training camp?
Yes, I believe so.
So, that's definitely an opportunity there maybe. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Benjamin get at least one long completion. That's a big part of the role he plays on that team, is that deep threat. And so I could see him having one of those Ted Ginn kind of games, 3 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown.
For the Lions side, Matt Stafford actually looked really good in this one. They were pretty pass-heavy in this one with the lack of Kerryon Johnson use, which we'll get to. But Stafford, 27 of 45, 385 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. Again, 29.6 points. Looked good, and I imagine they're going to have to throw a lot in this game as well. The big question is going to be Kerryon Johnson. So I shouldn't say not used a lot. He got 16 carries, just didn't do much against an Arizona Cardinals defense that is considered not to have a very good defense. Going up against a much better defense than the Los Angeles Chargers, are you expecting a bounce-back game for Kerryon Johnson?
If for no other reason than, he's a good running back, and sometimes good backs play good against good teams. If you that was deep analysis there.
Yeah.
Now, it depends on what you mean. Do I expect him to rush for 110 yards and a touchdown? It's within the range of outcomes, certainly.
Right.
But I would probably expect more of 75-yard kind of game. Maybe he catches a couple passes. That's an area where I think he's been underutilized so far this season. Kenny G is going to have to go up and show that he's the alpha dog. Marvin Jones is a real good deep threat. If you look at this team a little bit, it's starting to look a little Patriot-like. You got the big wide receiver on the outside. You got the Amendola/Edelman there on the inside. The deep threat, Marvin Jones/Philip Dorsett on the other side. The Hawkinson/Gronkowski at the tight end. By no means do I mean to say Stafford is like Tom Brady.
It's okay. You can say that.
But they've sort of put together this team now that they can use very similarly. So, if Galladay makes some plays or Jones makes some plays downfield, that's going to back up that defense and give some space for Kerryon Johnson to operate. And he's kind of silky when he gets in the line there. He's a lot stronger, I think, than people realized. I think they're catching on now that he's a pretty tough dude. So I think Stafford, I think he's on his way back. He's headed towards a bounce back from last year, but the jury is still out. That offensive line has to keep him upright.
Yeah, I think the biggest thorn in Kerryon's side is going to continue to be motherfucking C.J. Anderson, man. He just likes to bone everybody that he goes to, every team. 11 carries last week against the Cardinals. I do think that's going to hurt Kerryon's value moving forward if they're going to use him that much, especially as someone who owns Kerryon in a couple leagues as well. I'm really hoping he has a bounce-back game. Again, not a bad game, but against a much better Chargers front and linebacker core than what he faced in Arizona. It could be rough sledding ahead for him. On the wide receiver side, Kenny Galladay is an obvious start. I think he's proven that he needs to be in your lineup every week no matter what. Marvin Jones did not have a great game here, just 8 points against my goodness, Arizona last week. I don't know why I forgot that, but Danny Amendola came through big. We've talked about him before. Obviously, a guy that gets hurt often. Outside of Kenny G, are you trusting putting Amendola or Jones in your lineup this week against the Chargers?
Well, they're definitely in consideration for deeper flex spots. I don't like the inconsistency that Amendola brings. Never been a fan, in part based on his propensity to get hurt. So if I'm going to start one of them, I'm probably going to start Marvin Jones. But again, it'd be in the wide receiver 4 to 5 range for me.
All right, not much of a question here, but T.J. Hawkinson, I feel like after one game has already bucked the myth that tight ends cannot be successful in Detroit. I think a guy who was a huge waiver wire pickup this week, would you start him if you had him in your league? Because I do think he has the opportunity to be a top 10, if not higher right now, tight end moving forward the rest of the season. Your thoughts on Hawkinson?
Well, with young tight ends, you have to be concerned with consistency. But it's easy to be consistent when you're on the field, and Hawkinson is always on the field. He's the starter. He plays when they're running. He plays when they're passing. So he's out there. That makes it easy to get targets. So, but I don't know, I don't expect another 6 for 131 and a touchdown this year, or this week. I think that's unrealistic. It could happen. He could go 8 for 150 and 2. Maybe he is the next coming of Gronkowski. But I think history tells us that you have to beware. You don't want to chase last week's points.
Yeah.
If you've got Hawkinson, if your other option is C.J. Uzoma, that you're probably going to get 8 or 9 points out of, and you want to play the upside, start Hawkinson. But also remember, you could get a 2 for 13 out of Hawkinson.
Yeah. All right, so who are you picking? I'm taking the Chargers. I assume with the way you were talking earlier, you were leaning that way as well.
Yeah, it pains me too, but I'm taking the Chargers.
All right, so now on to one of the games I think could be one of the better games of the weekend, and that's the Vikings versus the Packers. The Packers getting 2.5, I'm assuming just because they are the home team. For the Vikings side of things, Kirk Cousins threw the ball only 10 times last week, so I'm going to group him in with Diggs and Thielen. If they're going to continue to be this run-heavy, are you worried about Cousins? And does this, in a way, make Diggs and Thielen, in a way, touchdown-dependent to get a lot of their fantasy value?
Well, if they're going to throw the ball 10 times, of course it makes them touchdown-dependent. I don't believe they're going to continually throw the ball 10 times. I think their preference is definitely to not throw the ball 50 times with Kirk Cousins, but they need to have a balanced offense, and running or throwing 10 passes isn't a balanced offense.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily worried about Cousins as someone who owns him in a couple leagues. I think that was just kind of the game plan they had last week. They got up on the Falcons fairly quickly, and then I think we're really just kind of able to run and ride Dalvin Cook in that one. I think Diggs and Thielen and Cousins all have a pretty good bounce-back game here against the Packers team, which did look very good on Thursday night. Opening week, I think that defense has been kind of reshaped and reformed. I expect this to be a much tighter game, and they're going to have to rely on those guys a little bit more. We saw Dalvin Cook, in my opinion, looked elite against that Atlanta Falcons team last week. Do you think he has a shot? And I know everybody has a shot, but I would say he's not someone who we've talked about in that elite category, up there with those top 5 running backs in Barkley, Zeke, CMC, DJ, and Gurley. Do you think he has a shot to get right up there close to that, maybe outbeat Mixon, who is that guy who is just on the outside of that group? Do you think Cook, if he continues to play like that and stays healthy, has a chance to jump up into a possible top 6 pick as of next year's fantasy drafts?
Well, we do talk about Cook from an elite talent standpoint, but it always comes down, we always push him back down a tier or two because of the health concerns. You know, he's shown that, you know, with the ball in his hands, he gets after it. And for me, I look at it from the standpoint of, at some point, I have to put aside if he stays healthy, and I have to put him in my lineup with confidence and let him go. I think we're at that point now. We're 2 years removed from the ACL. You know, last year he had struggled with the hamstring, which is common when coming back from the ACL. So now he's healthy. They invested a ton of money in their offensive line. They've got two exceptional wide receivers, a couple good tight ends. Cousins doesn't have to be a world beater quarterback. He can be who he is, which is a distributor, a game manager, because when you got Dalvin Cook going 60 yards for a touchdown, or Stephon Diggs going 60 yards for a touchdown, you don't need to try to put the team on your shoulders. That's not Cousins' strong suit. So, do I think Dalvin Cook can be a top 5 back? I think he can. I think, again, here I go. If he stays healthy all season with this improved offensive line, I could see him racking up 1,500 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns, catching 50 passes. That's going to put him way up there near the top.
Yeah, I think his versatility in the receiving game is going to really help boost him up in those running back categories and get those numbers, especially if he stays healthy. And one thing I do want to add is, I know everybody's been saying this, so chances are you won't be able to get him, but if you're the Dalvin Cook owner, please make sure you have Alexander Mattison, because he looked phenomenal as well in that game. And if Cook goes down, Mattison is likely going to be able to step right in and do exactly what Cook was doing, maybe minus a little bit of the receiving work, but definitely as a rusher. On the Packers side of things, their rushers, Aaron Jones had 38 snaps to Jamal Williams 26 snaps. So not a huge difference, but a decent enough amount to make you think that Aaron Jones is a starter, yet he struggled against this Bears defense. Do you think it was just the Bears defense being as good as they are, or maybe Aaron Jones just not being as good as we all hoped he would be?
I think it's the Bears defense. Okay. I like Jones's talent. I do think that, he needs 13 carries, in my opinion, isn't enough. I think you need to give him the ball earlier. You need to give him the ball more often and let him run the ball. Yes, he's going to have some 0 and -2s, but he's going to have some 9s and some 15s and some 40s. Give him the ball and let him play. I don't know what the hesitation is. He's starting to get grouped in with Kenyon Drake, where, so many people are like, well, he's so much more talented than everybody, and the coach doesn't give him the ball. And so, honestly, at some point, we got to admit maybe we're wrong, because they're the ones with the head coaching jobs. But when Jones gets the ball, Jones looks pretty good. You just got to give him the ball. Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to be rushing the ball 3 times. Jamal Williams, okay, he's a great pass blocker, but Jones is a pretty good pass blocker too. So I'm chalking it up to the Bears defense.
Fair enough. Outside of Devontae Adams, are you willing to start any of the other receivers, or you can throw Jimmy Graham in that mix this week against the Vikings?
I'm very comfortable starting Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think he's established himself as the number 2 there. I think that Green Bay, the Vikings have a pretty good defense. The Bears have the best defense. And so I think that Green Bay is going to be just fine when it comes to the passing game. I did hear, I think it was either Howard Bender and Jim Bowden, or it was Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey this afternoon. I was listening to Sirius, and somebody called in with a start-sit question, and it was Sammy Watkins and Devontae Adams. and two other people, and they said sit Adams.
Wow.
And now, granted, it was the other two receivers were of the same ilk, but it was, I guess they don't like the matchup. Xavier Rhodes, I guess there's some thought that he has Devontae Adams' number. I don't know. I can't see myself benching Devontae Adams any more than I can see myself benching Nuke Hopkins.
Yeah, that's just never going to happen for me. All right, who are you taking, the Vikings or the Packers?
I'm going to take the Packers.
As am I. Okay, interesting. I thought you might go Vikings there. All right. Next up, we've got the Colts and the Titans. Titans getting 3 points in this one on the Colts side. Jacoby Brissett, talked about it.
Only 3 points?
Only 3 points. Only 3 points. I know. It's crazy. As much as they blew out the future Super Bowl champion Cleveland Browns this past week, they are only getting 3 points. Jacoby Brissett looked good against the Chargers last week. I liked what I saw out of him again. I've been saying it all off season. I don't think he was going to be nearly as bad as everybody was making him out to be. And with the way that he played, he improved, I think, T.Y. Hilton's stock a little bit. A lot of people were down on T.Y. Hilton. In fact, a lot of people were getting T.Y. Hilton in the 5th and 6th round in some drafts because they thought he was not going to be a top wide receiver without Andrew Luck. Did T.Y. Hilton, with his performance in Week 1 with Jacoby Brissett, make him a must-start every week for you?
I think that T.Y. Hilton was pretty much a must-start anyways. He's a top 24 wide receiver. At worst, a top 30, which means you're going to start him in your flex. I didn't buy, much like you, I didn't buy the Jacoby Brissett of 2019 is going to be the same as Jacoby Brissett of 2017. I just didn't buy it. Is he going to be Andrew Luck? No, he's not going to be Andrew Luck. But he's going to be Jacoby Brissett, who's a professional quarterback, who has been in the league now for a number of years and has shown that he can run that offense. It's his second year in that offense. They've got some weapons. They've got Ebron and Mack and T.Y. Hilton, Nyheim Hines, Deion Kane. So even with some of the losses that they've suffered, they still have an offensive line that is so much better than 2017. And playmakers, they just have so many more playmakers. I love Jacoby Brissett this year. I don't know if he's top 12, but he's, top 15-ish, top 16-ish with top, I could see him maybe finishing up as high as 8. So somewhere between 8 and 16, that's where I'm comfortable with Brissett.
All right. Let's see here. Nyheim Hines, your guy Marlon Mack, balled out last week. Now, we have seen this before of him, and much as I mentioned in the Monday episode with Matt, let's not all overreact to one game, but Marlon Mack did look extremely good against the Chargers. I will give him that. With the way he looked, does that make Nyheim Hines droppable in redraft leagues?
I think it depends on who you're dropping him for. I mean, Hines still caught 4 passes. He didn't do anything with them, but he caught 4 passes, and he showed last year that he's a pretty good pass-catching back. So if you can get 4 or 5 catches out of Hines, and what did he have? 4 carries as well. So if Hines is getting 8 to 10 touches, that may still be worth keeping on your bench as a bye-week flex guy.
I agree with you, actually. I love Nyheim Hines. I think he's a stud. I think Marlon Mack, the biggest thing for me with Mack is he has an injury history, and if he gets hurt at any time, I do think Nyheim Hines will be a guy that not necessarily plug in and be a stud, but will then get a lot more run than he possibly did in Week 1. Again, it is only Week 1, so I'm not going to overreact. I'm keeping Hines on my bench as well. For the Titans, Marcus Mariota just destroyed the Cleveland Browns. Is this an upswing for him? I mean, we've seen that Marcus Mariota can play very well when he's healthy. Are you buying into Marcus Mariota and the new way that they're running this offense, or do you need to see more of it?
I mean, he only completed 14 passes. So, I don't know. You know, the Tennessee defense put him in a bunch of short field situations. Baker took some risks, you know, turned the ball over, pick six. It was, you know, the Browns, what'd they commit? 192 penalties?
It was actually 200. You were just short.
So the Browns played terribly sloppy. That doesn't take anything away from what Tennessee did, you know, but giving up that 75-yard screen pass to Derrick Henry, that was farcical. The Browns were just a hot mess. So hopefully they've spent the week getting their shit together. You know, Derrick Henry did what Derrick Henry does, but Mariota, I don't think Mariota showed anything more than he's shown us before. 14 of 24 for 248 yards. You know, 13 of 23 for 175 without that screen pass to Derrick Henry. And I get it, the screen pass counts, so you can't subtract it. But it didn't feel like that's something that you can count on. So I you know, if I have Mariota, I'm getting Tannehill because I don't think he's going to make it through the season.
Yeah, I think you've got to wait. Give me 2 more games of that, and then maybe I'll start believing in Marcus Mariota because I do think with a guy that can use his legs the way that he can, he has a lot of fantasy upside, but I need to see it from a couple more games from him before I'd be willing to throw him in a lineup. We saw A.J. Brown have a really good game against the Browns, including a couple big plays against Denzel Ward, who is considered to be a top cornerback. Are you willing to throw Brown in your lineup again this week?
I feel like you're chasing points. I'm not opposed to it again, but it's a flex spot, you know, second flex probably, maybe even third flex. So you're going to be getting into a deep roster. I need to see more. Now I will say Brown was my number 1 wide receiver coming into the year. I just don't think he's in a great situation with Marcus Mariota to provide any kind of consistency. You know, he did have 100 yards, but he only had 3 catches. So he made a couple big plays, but we need to see. I need to see consistency. So I'm not likely putting him in my lineup.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Much like Marcus Mariota, I need to see it for a couple more weeks before I'd be willing to throw him in. Just want to add that Delaney Walker is back. He is still the stud we all remember him to be just a couple years ago. Missed out on him last year, obviously, due to the really bad ankle injury that he suffered. I believe it was a dislocated or broken ankle in the first game last year. Came out and balled out against the Browns. Who you taking in this one, the Colts or the Titans?
I'm taking the Colts.
I am taking the Colts as well. Patriots and the Dolphins. Let's start with the Dolphins because, as I put in the notes, good luck. Because I don't think they have anyone worth playing except for maybe Kenyon Drake being a shot in the dark. Any chances you're throwing Drake in your lineup, or are you just avoiding the Dolphins altogether like I am?
Excuse me. I am starting Drake.
Okay.
But I've got a lineup that is literally, it's Mike Davis, Rashad Penny, and Kenyon Drake. So I'm clearly in a deep, deep rebuild. And it's a start 3 running backs, and those are my top 3 running backs. So he's going to be in my lineup. I think if I'm going to throw a Hail Mary for the Dolphins in this game, though, I'm throwing it at Preston Williams.
Okay.
Junk time is points time, and I think they're going to be down, and I think they're going to have to throw the ball. So you could almost in your flex spot, plug in Wilson or Parker or Williams, and get 10 points out of it just because they're going to have to throw it. I don't know. I don't think I'd play Fitzpatrick because him and Rosen are probably going to have to rotate during bouts of consciousness. Because I think this team is going to get the snot knocked out of them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. For the Patriots on the running back side, we saw James White and Rex Burkhead get a bulk of the work last week. I actually think this could be a Sony Michel game. If you had to start one of those three, who are you starting?
Well, I'm going to start Sony because he should get a lot. He should get 20 carries in this game. They should be up comfortably early, and they should be grinding out the clock. But in that scenario, and you've got your running back that's got a history of knee problems, and you're up 28 points going into the second half, maybe Burkhead gets 15 carries in the second half. I could see a scenario where that plays out, where Burkhead ends up getting 18 or 20 touches.
And then lastly, the wide receivers. So we know that obviously unless something else changes in the next couple of days with possibly AB going to the commissioner's exempt list, he will be playing. So that leaves you Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon, and AB, though it has been reported as well that AB has not done a very good job of picking up the playbook. Maybe that's because he's spending too much time Instagramming live from the TB12 place or whatever it is, his little workout studio. Who are you trusting to start this week? All three of them? Just Edelman? Just Gordon? What are your thoughts on these wide receivers?
In order, Edelman, Gordon, and then Antonio Brown. Yeah. But I can clearly see a scenario where Antonio Brown has a Ted Ginn game. 3 for 90 and a touchdown. He plays 25 or 30% of the snaps. It's against. But I guess I can also see a game where Brown plays the whole game to learn the offense. So maybe Brady plays 3 quarters and Brown plays. They keep Brown out there because they need him to get the reps. And it's essentially a coaching situation. Brady's out there with him. They're running plays for him. They're showing him, they're able to talk about things because it's live. And then he comes in, and then he's got Jarrett Stidham for the fourth quarter. That's probably very disrespectful to the Dolphins, and I don't mean any disrespect, but I get you're rebuilding. You're in a deep rebuild, just like my team that's starting Drake and Penny and Mike Davis, and it's okay. We're going to keep working hard. It's okay.
Yeah. So I assume there's no shot you're picking the Dolphins to win this game.
There's a little shot, but no, I'm picking the Patriots. The Dolphins play the Patriots tough in Miami.
Yeah, very true.
And, honestly, the Dolphins coach has spent the last 17 years or 18 years as a Patriots assistant, so he knows what's going on there. But Bill Belichick also, he's very adaptable to the situation at hand.
Yeah. As much as I think Brian Flores is going to be good for Miami, no shot that they win this game on Sunday. All right, next up we've got the Seattle Seahawks and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell Wilson struggled a little bit last week against the Bengals, though we've seen that out of him. Seems to struggle at the first start of the season's. Not worried about him. The only real question I have on the Seahawks side is Lockett and Metcalf. Are you willing to start either, neither, or both in your lineups this week?
It's a tough call. I started Metcalf last week in a league. I don't have any shares of Lockett, and I was really disappointed with the outcome for him. But I do think that the Steelers are good enough that the Seahawks are going to have to keep up, and so I would be willing to start Lockett and Metcalf.
As would I. I think it was a great game from Metcalf, a guy who was getting a lot of bad things said about him in the offseason, only being able to run like one route. I think he did a very good job. I'd like to see him continue to improve. I would start both. He
ran the hell out of that one route last week.
Hey, that he did. For the Steelers side, obviously saw them struggle mightily against the Patriots. Do you think that Big Ben has a bounce-back game here against Seattle?
I don't think Seattle's defense is what it was. They're going to be at home. The home road split for Ben is real, and I do think that they're going to bounce back. I think Ben is going to have a better game. He's going to have to spread the ball around more. Juju's got the toe issue, but everything's supposed to be okay. They need James Washington to step up.
All right, so that leads right into that. Do you think James Washington or Moncrief is going to be the two this week, or outperform? Which one do you think has the better game?
I think they're going to rotate, and I think it's going to be Washington.
Fair enough. And James Conner struggled, obviously, as well with the Patriots. Do you think that was just the Steelers as a whole struggling, or do you think this might be what Conner really is?
I don't think that's what he is. I think that I'm going to attribute some of the struggles to the Patriots. Conner is a good back. He's not a great back. He's a good back. He's going to be fine.
Who are you picking, Seattle or Pittsburgh?
I'm going to go with Seattle.
I am going to take Pittsburgh, so that is very interesting. All right, next up, Cowboys-Redskins, another game that I think could be very close, a lot closer than people are giving them credit for. Let's see here. On the Cowboys side, Dak dominated. Do you think him and the best wide receiver trio in all of the NFL land can do it again against the Redskins?
I certainly think they're capable. Dallas has an exceptional offensive line. They're very balanced with Zeke. And, Amari Cooper, I love Michael Gallup this year. Last offseason and the end of last season when I was making trades, Michael Gallup was a guy I was targeting, and I picked up a bunch of shares of him last year. I'm extremely happy. I think Cobb played better than I expected.
Yeah.
I think he fit in there very well, and they do make a great trio.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Cobb point. I think Cobb could be the reason. It's crazy for me to say this. I think Cobb could be the whole reason that offense works as well as it does. If he can provide in the slot, it is really going to help out Amari and Gallup, and I'm with you on Gallup. I think he is actually one of the main reasons why I think Amari Cooper still does not have quite the season everybody is hoping, because he is going to break out, which will be a good, bad thing for you because, you've got all your shares of Gallup, but you are very heavily invested in Amari Cooper and show bets against me.
Well, I think Cooper's going to have a great year. I think Gallup is going to be the reason that Cooper doesn't get his contract from the Cowboys.
I would not disagree with you on that. I think with what we saw out of Zeke in week 1, they will continue to feed him this week. I think Zeke's back and easily a guy that you can plug in. If you were worried about it last week and maybe started Pollard or left him on your bench to see what he did, no worries anymore. He is good to go. On the Redskins side, you mentioned this earlier. I said I thought Case Keenum looked good. It was interesting to me. Had Matt on. He obviously played for the Broncos last year. We talked about it on Monday. I feel like, obviously, when he was in Minnesota with John DeFilippo, actually had a good year. And now he comes here with Jay Gruden, who is considered to be a very good offensive coach. Could it maybe be just that Case Keenum needs a offensive mind here? I think that he looked good. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not suggesting to start Case Keenum in like a regular 12 or even 14 team league. Superflex, I think he's worth a start. But with Case Keenum looking as good as he did, do you think that scary Terry McLaurin is the real deal in Washington?
I think McLaurin was the real deal before, and I think he showed it by playing, what did he play, 89% of the snaps or something?
He was 91, actually, I believe. He was all the rookies.
Washington believes in him. They're like, look, dude, there's going to be games where he doesn't lead them in targets and he doesn't lead them in catches, but he's shown them, I'm on the verge of being the number one. They may bring in somebody that's, that true Julio Jones type of alpha, but until they do, Terry McLaurin is, he's kind of shaping up to be that 1B type of receiver. We'll see how his rookie year progresses. But, yeah, I love what McLaurin is doing.
Yeah, I know both of us have talked about it all offseason, again, not just because we are Buckeyes fans, but after everything we saw from the Combine and the Senior Bowl, that we both said that talent wins out. Doesn't matter what they paid Paul Richardson. Doesn't matter how much money he's getting. Terry McLaurin is the better player. He's going to be the guy there. I am with you. If you can get him in any of your redraft leagues or anything, I would get him now, as I think he's going to possibly be the best rookie wide receiver this year. With guys being out likely at least for 8 weeks, or he can't come back until week 8, I believe, chances are he might not be back the rest of the season. Are you trusting more in Adrian Peterson or Chris Thompson?
I don't trust either of them.
Okay.
I think this week I expect AP to push for 20 carries. I think that it's going to be close long enough for him to get some carries. I think Thompson's going to, get some passing game work because AP he's not a good pass catcher. And so they're going to split time. When they're passing, it's Thompson. When they're running, it's Peterson. And they're both going to get they're both probably low-end flex-worthy players.
All right, who you taking, Cowboys or Redskins?
Cowboys.
As am I. Let's move on to the Cardinals and the Ravens. Kyler Murray looked horrible in the first half, looked amazing in the second half. With that, do you think he can help Christian Kirk have a fantasy-relevant day this week against a very tough Ravens defense?
Well, I think he looked good in the second half of the second half. I mean, Murray didn't look great for 3 quarters. Maybe he's putting it together. I don't know. I'm not sold on Murray. I'm not, he's not my guy. I'm a Haskins guy. But, he did bring him back. I don't know if that's a testament about Murray or if it's a testament about Matt Patricia and how he runs that defense in Detroit. I think Detroit, I think they kind of blew that one, in my opinion. I like DJ. I think Murray, those that like Murray, let him have Murray. You believe, you play him. DJ, I think I think he is back in the elite running back discussion. I don't think he's not part of the top 4, but I can see, he's 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that. I think we saw from him last week enough that we need to see, as long as he's healthy, he is right outside those top 4. On the Ravens side, Lamar Jackson, we're going to get a little bit deeper into this one because everybody's crowning him the new Patrick Mahomes. If you really go and watch that game and look at some of the throws he made, he had all day in the pocket, went, ate lunch, took a shit, came back, and then threw the ball to Marquise Brown twice. When you have Marquise Brown, one of the fastest wide receivers in the league, I don't care who you have on him. You put Patrick Peterson on him. Eventually, he is not going to be able to cover Marquise Brown for that long. I did like some of the throws that Lamar Jackson made, but let's calm down a little bit on the Lamar Jackson being QB1 going forward hype. He played a high school defense last week. He is not going to play a much better defense this week, so people will probably continue to overrate and overhype Lamar Jackson, but I do not think that he is quite what we saw out of him last week. Do you agree or disagree with that, Dennis?
Yeah, I appreciate what Lamar did last week. But I'm not, I won't say that I'm sold. I need to see a little more.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Looks like we saw the return of Mark Ingram last week. Looked really good. An offense that looks like they're going to be very run heavy. I think Mark Ingram is a solid in your starter or in your lineup every single week kind of guy. With what we were just talking about with Lamar, do you believe in starting Marquise Brown this week, or is it something, as you've been pointing out for a couple of these other guys, do you think it's chasing the points again this week as well?
Well, I think Marquise Brown is definitely chasing points. I mean, he only played, 30% of the snaps or something?
Yes.
It was super low. I'm not sold on it yet. I think that Ravens team could end up being pretty good. I'm not as high on Lamar, and I wasn't as high on Marquise Brown, but I think together they could work well together. And then you've got, Mark Ingram just chewing up yardage on the ground, and Gus Edwards led the team in carries.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then, my guy Mark Andrews. So they have some balance. And they've got a decent offensive line. So I think starting Marquise Brown is chasing points. That doesn't mean the points won't be there, but he's not starting for me unless I'm super desperate.
Yeah, and you just mentioned Mark Andrews played the least amount of snaps as all 3 of the tight ends, but we saw out of him everything we needed to. Dude is an elite tight end, a guy that me and you have both been talking about as a tight end sleeper this year. Worth starting. I don't care how many snaps he gets because of how talented he is. Who you taking in this one, the Cardinals or the Ravens?
I'm going to take the Ravens.
As am I. All right, on to the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. For the Jaguars, we saw, unfortunately, Nick Foles go down, but the GOAT, Gardner Minshew II, and there is no Gardner Minshew the first, stepped up and actually proved to be a fairly good quarterback, though a lot of his better stats coming in the second half when it was a lot of garbage time production. But I do believe in Minshew. I think we need to see a little bit more out of him before we anoint him the next best or the next Tom Brady, since he was drafted in the 6th round. But I did like what we saw out of him. Leonard Fournette struggled a little bit in this one. You have any hopes that Leonard Fournette can provide RB2 numbers for you this week against the Texans?
Well, Leonard Fournette averaged 5.1 yards a carry. So, I mean, is that what we're classifying struggling as? I mean, they only gave him the ball 13 times, and so I'm going to say that's probably due to game script. He caught 4 passes. So, I mean, what's the guy got to do?
Better than that. I don't know. I really don't. I was just, I'm not someone who's been big on Fournette. Maybe it's just the lack of touchdowns. I don't know. But I feel like I need to see more out of him before I'm willing to. I mean, you're going to start him anyways because of where you drafted him, but I'm not sold on him. A guy that you've been sold on all offseason is D.D. Westbrook. I think he's an easy play in your lineup. But what about the Chark attack? He had an amazing game last week, a career game. Are you willing to start him in your lineups this week?
I'm probably more willing to start him, I think, than D.D. Westbrook.
Okay, really?
So,
okay.
Not that's kind of tongue-in-cheek there. Chark, they're playing different roles. Westbrook is the short guy. He's playing out of the slot. He's running the short routes. Chark is running the fly routes. He's getting downfield, and it showed in the results. They both caught 4 passes. Or no, actually Westbrook caught 5. But, Westbrook had a 6.0 yards per catch, and Chark had a 36.5 yards per catch. Each of them had a touchdown. So, it's a tough situation when you want a guy to do well, and he looks like he's right on the verge of it, but then this other guy that you weren't quite expecting is over here off to the side just blowing up. And that's kind of what happened. So I wouldn't hate starting Chark. Chris Conley probably had the best all-around game between the two of them, 6 for 97 and a touchdown. So that's a situation that's going to need to shake out a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you're desperate, start Chark, but give it 1 or 2 more weeks, and if he continues to prove something close to that, I'd be more than willing to play him every single week. On the Texans side, we know Deshaun Watson, easy start. DeAndre Hopkins, easy start. The biggest question is going to come in that backfield between Hyde and Johnson. Which one would you start if you had to choose? If you had both of them on your roster, which one are you starting?
I'm probably going to start Duke over Hyde, just because Duke, they're going to be pretty close to even on the carries, maybe 55 or 60% Hyde on the carries. But Duke will be out there in the passing game. Duke had 4 catches last week to go with 9 carries. Carlos Hyde had 10 carries and 1 catch. So I think it's a pretty even split. Either one of them could be a serviceable bye week guy right now. I think you have to wait and see what happens going forward. Historically, Watson doesn't throw the ball to the running back a lot, and I think that sort of puts a little crimp in Duke's upside.
Yeah, I agree with you on that part, but I'm still starting Duke as well, although Hyde did look good running the ball last week against against the Saints. Who are you picking, the Jaguars or the Texans?
Texans.
I'm taking the Texans as well. Chiefs Raiders. We know Patrick Mahomes. He is worthy of starting. McCoy and Damian Williams. Who are you going between those two?
Can I pass?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't pass.
No, I'm not a Williams fan, but I think he's the one between the two. McCoy is going to be okay, but I think Williams presents more upside than McCoy does, though I don't think he presents as much upside as a lot of people believe.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose one or the other, I'm going Williams just because of what we saw out of the receiving game. But McCoy did not look bad at all in that game. He looked like a very good runner. If you've got McCoy, I would feel safe starting him if you needed him as a flex starter. Do you believe in what we saw out of Sammy Watkins? Obviously had in a career game. We've seen it from him before. Tyreek Hill out, so a lot of people believing Sammy Watkins will step up and be that wide receiver one. Are you believing in Watkins, and do you think McCole Hardman has any chance of producing at a fantasy into fantasy relevance this week against the Raiders?
Yes, I believe in Sammy. I think he's shown it numerous times over his career that he can play at a very high level. I think you play him until he breaks. Maybe he makes it the whole season. He's shown in the past that he's probably going to break down, but you can't just keep him on your bench because he could go 5 or 6 or 7 games putting up 8 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown every other game. But you can't leave that on your bench just because you think he's going to get injured like he always does. You got to play him until he's injured. McCole Hardman, I was actually kind of shocked at his usage after Tyreek went out, just because Tyreek was out most of the offseason, and they worked Hardman in his role pretty nonstop. And so I would have expected he could have slid into it a little more seamlessly, but that certainly wasn't the case.
Yeah, for me, I think right now I'm going to go ahead and believe in Sammy Watkins, though I am one of his more ardent detractors. I don't think he's going to do anything close to what he did last week. Obviously, again, that was kind of a career night, but I'm still not expecting a whole lot out of Sammy Watkins, but he is playing with the best quarterback in the league, so I could be wrong there. I do think Mecole Hardman takes a little bit of a step forward this week. Do I think he's going to be a wide receiver 2 or even 3 for fantasy this week? No, but I do think he will show us a little bit of why they were so high on him and drafted him where they did. For the Raiders side of things, Derek Carr looked much better. Tyrell Williams looked like a good wide receiver too, and Darren Waller showed a lot of upside. What is your faith in Williams and Waller moving forward?
I think they're both comfortable starts. I think Waller could push for top 5 or top 6 tight end if he can maintain the consistency. I'll take 6 catches for 70 yards or 7 catches for 70 yards every week, just because I know at least every 2 or 3 weeks he's going to get me a touchdown too, and that's a pretty high floor there. Tyrell Williams looked good. I think he's set up and ready to take over that role, and I was pleased with Josh Jacobs too. It was kind of a Melvin Gordon first 3 years of his career performance, 3.8 yards a carry, but he looked good. They're going to give him every opportunity to be the bell cow there. I've maintained all off season. I'm not sure. I don't think he can handle it, but until he shows he can't, let's ride him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on both of those. I think Tyrell Williams, if you were able to get him off your waiver wires, you just stole a high upside wide receiver too. And Darren Waller, with as weak as the tight end position is in fantasy, he's definitely worth the add and play. If he gets targeted and used anything like what we saw out of Jared Cook last year, he's going to be phenomenal for fantasy. Who are you picking in this one, the Chiefs or the Raiders?
I'm going to take the Raiders at home.
Ooh, okay, I like it. I was going to go there, but I didn't have the balls to do it. I'm going with the Chiefs. Just a few more games left here. Let's go Bears-Broncos. For the Bears side, Mitch Trubisky surrounded by weapons, but is yet still struggling to get it done. Are you at all considering starting Mitch in your leagues? And then outside of Allen Robinson, are you going to start any of the receiving options?
Yeah, I'm going to wait to see on Anthony Miller. I like Miller a lot. I think he's going to bounce back. I was a little disappointed with Trey Burton out that Miller struggled so bad. I think some of that's attributed to Mitch. But I'm still comfortable starting Cohen, starting Montgomery, and starting A-Rob.
Yeah, I think for me, outside of Allen Robinson, he's the only receiving target that I'm willing to start, especially after what we saw out of him in that Thursday night game. Mitch, I'm starting him just based on what I think he can get you with his legs. I do think that was just a little bit of first game of the season, Thursday night football game, a lot of pomp and circumstance going around with that game being the 100th season opening of the 100th season and everything. I still believe in Mitch, played a really good Green Bay defense. You've got, between the running backs here, Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery, and Mike Davis. So we saw Mike Davis get a lot of carry, though I thought David Montgomery looked the best running the ball. And we saw Tariq Cohen getting used more often as a wide receiver. Some of that doing, I think, with the fact that Anthony Miller was still dealing a little bit with an injury. Are you willing to start either, neither, or all three of those running backs this week against my goodness, I can't believe I just forgot who they're playing.
Broncos.
The Denver Broncos.
You know, I expect, I'd like to think that when they watched the tape, they saw that Montgomery was a good pass catcher. I mean, he looked great on his one target there, that he was dynamic in the hole and was able to, he showed some acceleration. Does he go from 0 to 90? Well, no, but we know that about him. But he goes from 0 to 60 quickly. He's got that great jump cut. Give Montgomery some volume. He's going to be fine. Davis is a Jag. He's going to put him behind a good offensive line like the Bears, and he's going to put okay numbers up. And Cohen he's the Bears slot receiver.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I had to start either all three, or however you really want to do it, Cohen and Montgomery are the guys for me. Not at all believing in Mike Davis, though he did look good at times. David Montgomery looked phenomenal. I agree with you. I think they need to commit to him like the Oakland Raiders have committed to Josh Jacobs, and he will be very fruitful for them, just like Josh Jacobs was for the Raiders. On the Broncos side of things, Joe Flacco looked like Joe Flacco, yet Cortland Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders both produced with him. Do you think they have a chance to come out and produce against a very tough Bears defense this week?
I think if you have Sutton, you probably drafted him high enough that you have to start him, and maybe the same with Sanders. At the very least, they're going to be your flex guys. It's going to be a challenge for that offense all around. That Bears defense is no joke. I guess the upside to it is Denver has the coach that designed that defense, so they may be able to attack it with some efficiency, but I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, I'd be willing to start both as flex wide receivers this week. I think they both have the upside potential, but again, against a very tough Bears defense, I don't expect either one of them to put up the numbers they did against the Raiders last week. And then lastly, Lindsey and Freeman, both of them had pretty much the same amount of carries. Freeman, just I believe a couple more than Lindsey, but Lindsey way more active in the receiving game. So if you had to start one of those two, who are you starting?
Well, I think if you're only starting one, I think you're starting Lindsey because he's getting the receiving work as well. But they both did look pretty good. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out going forward.
Yeah, I think you have to start the GOAT, Philip Lindsay. It's not even a question for me. I just wanted to see the answer you would give. Who are you picking, Bears or Broncos?
Bears.
I'm picking the Bears as well. The New Orleans Saints versus almost said the St. Louis. The Los Angeles Rams here, the other really good game on the docket this weekend. Drew Brees has tended to struggle on the road, though I do think Kamara and Michael Thomas easy starts regardless of what Drew Brees does. But with Brees struggling on the road, do you think that you can start Ginn or Cook with any kind of confidence this week?
I've never started Cook with confidence.
Okay.
So I'm probably in that same boat there. I've never been a big believer in Jared Cook. Ginn, he's a boomer bust guy.
Yeah.
It is what it is. He plays a specific role on that team, and he plays it well. So if Brees gets enough time against that Rams defense, then the potential is there for Ginn to produce, top 36 wide receiver numbers. I don't think I'd expect much more than that out of him. He may flash here or there throughout the season, but he's a boomer bust guy he's got an okay floor, I guess, but sometimes they just go away from him.
Yeah.
So it's it's a roll of the dice.
For me, he's bust this week. We talked about it on the Monday Night Preview show. I said I thought Ginn would have a good game. He came through for me there. I don't think he's able to produce against the Saints this week. But I would start Jared Cook with confidence. I think it's a little bit of a bad game for him, but I'm a believer in Cook this week. On the Rams side, Jared Goff struggled against the Panthers. I'd imagine coming back home, he'll be all right. Woods and Cup had good games last week, but Cook struggled. Do you think all three of these guys have good games, or one or two? What are you leaning with this wide receiver group?
I definitely think the opportunity is there for them to have good games, especially if Cooks gets matched up with Eli Apple. God bless Eli Apple, the old Buckeye, but man, he's of the 64 starting cornerbacks in the NFL, I think he's 64.
Yeah, I am right there with you, unfortunately, on Eli Apple. All right, so that gets us to Malcolm Brown and Todd Gurley. We saw Todd Gurley actually had a very good game, but Malcolm Brown gets the touchdown, kind of vultures him, and then on the second touchdown, he was in the whole drive. So I can't say that he vultured him on the second touchdown, but definitely did on the first one. If you have Malcolm Brown, are you consider starting him at maybe a flex spot, and are you comfortable that's a stupid question. You're comfortable starting Gurley, guys. Come on, let's not overthink it. But Malcolm Brown, you willing to throw him in your flex spot?
It would depend on my options. I think last week was probably his ceiling.
Yeah.
The one touchdown was 21, 22 yards.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the red zone. So it was one of those situations. It's just how it worked out. I don't think it was really we're going to keep Gurley on the bench kind of thing. So Gurley had a good game. Just, touchdowns can be fluky sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly my thoughts on it as well. I mean, he just got unlucky with those two, with not getting the touchdowns. But if he gets both of those, Gurley has a phenomenal day, and he looks like he's back, and nobody's talking about Malcolm Brown this week. I would not feel comfortable starting Malcolm Brown in my flex, but give me Todd Gurley all day long. Who are you picking in the AFC Championship rematch, the Saints or the Rams?
I'm taking the Rams again.
I'm taking the Saints to get a little bit of revenge here, at least I hope. Let's move into the Sunday night football game between what looks to be a very good game and the Philadelphia Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons. So the Philadelphia Eagles started off slow in that second half, but Carson Wentz really kind of turned it on. Outside of Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz, are you willing to start any of these other receiving options?
I think you got to give Deshaun Jackson an opportunity. He seems to have shown that he's got some chemistry with Carson Wentz, and Wentz will take the shots. So, yeah, I'd put D Jackson as a startable, at the very least in a flex spot.
Yeah, see, I'm torn on D-Jax because he's much like a player we just talked about, and Ted Ginn has all that boom-bust potential. I think he's likely more of a bust this week than boom, but I do agree with you. I think with what he showed you last week, you got to give him the shot. You've got to go ahead and throw him in your lineup, and you know what? Because much like Ted Ginn, it only takes that one play, and he's producing for you. So if you're desperate, throw him in your flex, but I would feel somewhat comfortable throwing him in your flex, especially with the way that Atlanta just kind of got beat up in that game. I know mostly on the ground, but still their defense did not look good at all, so I'd be willing to throw him in there as well. What are you thinking on this backfield here? So obviously, in my opinion, Miles Sanders looked like by far the better running back on some of his plays. But Jordan Howard was in there a little bit, and Darren Sproles was in there a lot. Who are you willing to start out of these three if you need a good game out of an RB2?
I think Darren Sproles and Frank Gore, they're part of the Men in Black team or something. I don't know. They're those two old son of a guns. I'm going to start. I'm probably starting Miles Sanders. I just think he's the best back of the three, the most versatile of the three. And at some point, I got to believe Peterson, if they're going to quote-unquote ride the hot hand, at some point Sanders' hand is going to be the hottest.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that again. I thought he looked amazing in some of the runs. There was a couple bad runs he had, and then he had a really good run. I can't remember, I think it was like a 30, 40-yarder, 20, maybe it was only 20 yards, that got called back due to a penalty. So, but I'm a huge believer in Miles Sanders. Everybody knows this. I've had him right there with David Montgomery the entire offseason. I thought he proved that he could be the starter last week. I hope that they transition more to him being the guy this week. On the Falcons side of things, Matt Ryan had a great fourth quarter, much like Kyler Murray. We saw Devonta Freeman struggled a lot here. Now, some of that I think was probably game script and how fast and how quickly they got down to the Minnesota Vikings. Are you believing in Devonta Freeman to possibly have a bounce-back game this week?
Yeah, and I'm curious about game script because Freeman has always been a good pass catcher as well as a good runner. It's just the way the Falcons have done it is they employ a split backfield with one of the guys getting between 60 and 70%, and that's historically been Freeman. So I feel like Freeman will get his opportunities. He's coming off an injury, so maybe that played into it. You know, they're kind of easing him back in after being injured last year. Julio and Ridley, I think you start your studs.
Yeah, exactly. Julio and Ridley, no doubt about it. The Hooper Scooper, do you think he has another good game, or do you think he's going to poop the bed this week?
It's the tight end position, so you start him and you cross your fingers. It's just that you've got the big three, and O.J. Howard showed last night. Everything else is cross your fingers.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. If I have to trust him, I mean, I'm praying to God it happens, but I'm not feeling good about it at all. Who are you picking to win this Sunday night football game? The Philadelphia Eagles or the Atlanta Falcons?
Going Eagles.
Interesting. I like it. That's exactly who I am taking as well. All right, so let's get into it. By far the best game of the entire football slate, mostly because I think the Browns really have a shot to win this one, and if they don't, the train is going to fall off the rails. It is the Browns and the Jets. Browns going into New York. Let's start with the Cleveland Browns. Do you expect Baker to have a bounce-back game here? I don't, as I stated on Monday's show, think that he had a bad game. It was still a game going into the fourth quarter. But man, that fourth quarter was horrible. Add in all the penalties, the offensive line injuries, your left tackle kicking people in the face. I think the Browns are in for a much better game and more of what we hoped they would do. What are your thoughts on Baker and the Browns in this one?
Well, they've got to get the penalties under wrap, and you just can't be pushing yourself backwards the whole game, and that's what they were doing. And then we have a suspect offensive line as it is, especially at left tackle, and to lose the best one of those suspects because of a stupid penalty, and then the guy that came in to replace him, his backup, played 2 plays before he went out with an injury?
Yeah.
I think they were grabbing people out of the stands to play left tackle after that.
Yeah, it was bad.
So, I think Baker bounces back. I think that we're gonna. Should we get I'm not going to ask, I'm going to state. We should probably get used to multiple interception games from Baker because he thinks he can make every throw. So it's just going to happen. That might be something we're going to have to learn to live with. That being said, let him go. Let him play his game. Put him in position. But that position needs to be the upright and locked position. Got to keep him off his back.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's something I've said about Baker the entire time. I love the kid. I think he's phenomenal, but he does like to throw some dangerous balls, and he's going to get picked quite often. So I'm with you on that. I do think that he's going to throw multiple interceptions. That's just part of it. Chubb, I think, is going to have a good game here. I do think part of his struggles were also due to the issues with the offensive line. I'm not worried about Chubb moving forward in this one. If you had to choose one of these two wide receivers to start or have a big game on Monday night, who you taking, Odell or Jarvis Landry?
Taking Odell.
As am I. I think Odell's going to have a huge game coming back into Monday night. At least I hope, with all of the talk that he has been doing about everything all offseason. I'd love for him to have a huge shut-up game this week. On the Jets side, this is Going to be the more interesting thing. So we know Le'Veon Bell had an MRI on his shoulder due to soreness. Probably has something to do with the fact that he played literally every single offensive snap last Sunday after not playing a game in over 500 games. Add in that now Sam Darnold is out with mono. We touched on it on Thursday's episode. Looks like he will not be back till probably week 5, as in the mono takes it takes a lot out of you. You will lose weight, a bunch of other different stuff going on with that. I've never had it, but obviously it takes a little bit of time to get over. They're saying they're likely not going to push him back very quickly. They do have a bye week in week 4, so maybe give him a couple weeks rest and aim for him to come back and start in week 5. Trevor Siemian gets the start here. Don't have a whole lot of confidence in him, though he has proven that he can be a comparable starter when he started in Denver. With him being the starter, outside of Le'Veon Bell, who is obviously an easy and must start, I believe Jamison Crowder can have a good game here, and I would still be willing to throw him into a flex spot. Would you be willing to trust anybody else, and would you be willing to start Jamison Crowder this week?
Yeah, just because I think he's going to get volume. Siemian is known as a check down kind of guy, so things are going to be close to the line of scrimmage. If the Jets are going to win this, they've got to figure out how to get the ball downfield, and who is that going to be? Is Robbie going to be healthy enough to be in there and play? I don't even know now that Inun was out.
Yeah,
I'm not, and Demarius isn't going to be playing yet. So I'm not even sure who the third wide receiver is off the top of my head.
Oh, goodness, who is it? I was just looking at this the other day. So you obviously have Robbie Anderson, who I don't think is going to have a good... Braxton Berrios, but I think he's dealing with an injury, and I'm not even sure who it is either. I think, let me look here. It is Braxton Berrios, Josh Bellamy. So yeah, I'm not trusting anybody outside of Jamison Crowder, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's going to be a long day.
I hope that the Browns put up like 41 points because they need a big shut-up game. Although, even if they win this one, everybody's going to be saying, well, it's because the Jets were beat up and you were expected to win this one now with Siemian being out. So who are you picking, the Cleveland Browns or the New York Jets?
In a shocker, I'm going Browns.
Yeah, as am I. Well, that is it right there. That covers the full slate. Obviously, we will be back. Everybody enjoy your weekend of football, college, and NFL week 2. Hopefully you guys can get a win here. The fantasy gods will grant you a win this week. Dennis, thank you so much for joining me for this preview episode. Have yourself a good weekend, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
I'll talk with you later, and I'd like to wish my wife a happy 23rd anniversary tomorrow. Or yes. Saturday when this will come out.
I hope that it'll go up tonight, buddy, and I wish both of you a happy anniversary as well. 23 years, congratulations to you both, and have fun celebrating that on Saturday.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Prepare for glory!
I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly.
Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
As a small business owner, you deserve more. More confidence, more connectivity, more of the tools that help your business thrive. And at Cox Business, you can expect more from us. We don't just have sales reps. We have perfect plan identifiers, people who will work with you to make sure your business gets everything it needs and nothing that it doesn't. Your business deserves more, and that's why you can expect more from Cox Business. Call 800-526-8572 to switch today. As a small business owner, you deserve more. More confidence, more connectivity, more of the tools that help your business thrive. And at Cox Business, you can expect more from us. We don't just have sales reps. We have perfect plan identifiers, people who will work with you to make sure your business gets everything it needs and nothing that it doesn't. Your business deserves more, and that's why you can expect more from Cox Business. Call 800-526-8572 to switch today.